determined advocate for justice, a dogged defender of our community. He is a thoughtful leader of our home and his law practice. He is my inspiration to work more selflessly to improve the condition of our community at all costs. You see, I have marveled at his sleepless nights in preparation to defend clients who, although they could not afford it, deserve just representation. I am inspired by his sound judgment, his acumen for leadership, and his sincere heart. I've watched him deny his own needs under the weight of his deep concern for others. And I know that his admirable character and his wisdom beyond his years comes from being mentored by my late mother and father-in-law, Nubia and Chokwe Lumumba, who moved their young family to this city in 1988 for the sole purpose of service to the people. So you see, my brothers and sisters, that's all my husband has ever known, that the community is our family, and we are to fight for our families, and we are to serve our community. 2 years ago, our city was pregnant with purpose and potential and hope, and I was pregnant with a lockout. And at that time, we stood here just a few steps behind us to offer our hearts and our talents to the people of Jackson. We stood here because we fundamentally believed that Jackson deserved leadership that embodied progress, unity, honesty, and championed all the voices of Jackson's citizens. 2 years later, our city is in peril. We are desperate for solutions to crime and infrastructure, education, and economic stability. 2 years later, we have lost control of our airport and are under the threat of losing control of the entire city altogether. So we have returned 2 years later, not because we believe that the job will be easy, but because we believe in Jackson and its people. We were serious when we said that we were one city with one aim and a determined destiny. We are here because despite insults to our family and unfair criticism, we refuse to sit quietly while the people of Jackson are underpaid and underserved. Right. So it is without reservation and with
I was in many of your homes running around. I see church members from the many churches we've been through over the years. Right? I see a community of love. And it is that love that drives my desire to want to stand with you at this very moment. Before I share with you the words that I've prepared, I'd like that you all give my wife a round of applause. From the moment we concluded our last campaign, people have approached me each and every day asking if we would run again. And I was consistent in saying that we would only do so if it was necessary. If it was necessary. And it appears to be necessary. I also went and sought the advice of my best friend, of my wife, and I prayed. I meditated to understand what we should do, and one day, while we were in service, my wife reached over to me and pointed to a scripture that I believe is appropriate that I start with today. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. For the rights of those who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. Proverbs 31:8. From the moment we concluded our last campaign, people have approached me each and every day asking if we would run again. And I was consistent in saying that we would only do so if it was necessary. If it was necessary. And it appears to be necessary. I also went and sought the advice of my best friend, of my wife, and I prayed. I meditated to understand what we should do, and one day, while we were in service, my wife reached over to me and pointed to a scripture that I believe is appropriate that I start with today. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. For the rights of those who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. defend the rights of the poor and needy. Proverbs 31:8. Confronted with very real threats. We face the great challenge of a crumbling infrastructure, furloughed city employees, the potential of the regionalization of our water system, the illegal takeover of our city's airports, and a city budget that is completely out of whack. In the midst of this most critical moment, we are in the midst of the most critical days of our time. And at this moment, we must not find ourselves on the wrong side of history. But I do have some good news. There is some good news.
Yeah.
And the good news is, no matter how great the task may be, we remain convinced that we have all that we need to stem the tide.
Yeah. Yeah.
We must stand united
That's right.
in our refusal to be led by obstructions and setbacks, but instead by the inspiration of our collective genius in our efforts to build a city beyond contradiction. Right now, we must begin to rescue ourselves and become the change we wish to see. In the pursuit of these goals, we